English Mystery of the Week. So exciting. Yes, I agree. I get excited about it too. Trust me. In fact, let's get to the English Mystery of the Week right now. And I'll go through it, and then we'll have time for questions about it. This way we can focus on a specific topic. Okay, so let's get to this week's English Mystery of the Week. And here it is.
Hi, Teacher Paul. This is Leonie.
This is Kenta.
I have a question for you. I know it's okay to say, do you mind taking my picture with the CN Tower in the background or with the Rogers Center, with the Eaton Center? But why can't I say with the Yorkdale Mall? Or what about Niagara Falls? Can I say with the Niagara Falls in the background?
Mr. Paul, please help us solve this English mystery.
Okay, guys, thank you to Ryomi and Kenta for sending us that question. This is a great question, and I'm really happy that you asked it. I'm going to do a couple of things here. If you give me a second, I'm going to bring down the main question in the form of contrasting sentences. Okay. We have these two examples here. Right? Can you all see that? It's a little bit wacky. That's okay. I'll bring it over here. Not so straight, that's okay. What we're really looking at here is, you know, the idea that, what's the difference here? In these phrasings, these are places that we can visit and they have the article the in front of them. But over here we have other places we can visit and they have no article. So we're wondering, Ryomi and Kenta are wondering, why do we put an article here but no article here? So I want to do, first of all, a quick review of how articles work. And to do that, I'm going to bring up a graphic. And it says, so much fun. Yeah, you know what? If you don't like grammar, don't watch this show. If you like grammar and you're interested in learning more about it and you want to explore its mysteries, this is what the show is all about. If you don't like language learning, or if you don't want to improve, this is probably not the show for you. Or if you just want to, I don't know, learn conversational English, maybe this isn't the show for you because you just listen to me. But if you're interested in exploring grammar and how it works and how it doesn't work, this is what the show is all about. Okay, we're talking about articles or determiners. Determiner is the larger class. But to understand articles, I want to bring up a little chart I have that will help us understand articles. First of all, what is an article? Well, it's either the or a or an, right? Well, these are pretty similar. So let's put a slash. And I think you've heard that we use a or an depending on whether this is a noun that has a vowel like an egg, or a dog has a consonant, right? And these are called the indefinite articles. They're not specific. This is called the definite article because it represents something specific. What I want you to understand with articles, though, and one of the challenges is, of course, some languages in the world that you start with, some of your native languages, have no articles in their grammar. So when you learn English and you have to understand articles, it's challenging. I understand that. I believe Japanese is a language that has no articles. So for the Japanese learner, learning how to use the, a, and an is a challenge. And I want to help you with that. One thing you need to know about articles is that they go in front of nouns. Which nouns? Well, every time you use a noun, you have to think about it. Every noun you use may get a, an, the, or no article. You have to make a choice. How do you make that choice? One way to do it is to use Teacher Paul's article accelerator chart, this chart here. So I can give you a copy if you contact me by my email. I can send you a copy of this file so you can have it on your desk when you're working. It's particularly important when you're writing, for example. Now, when I was a child, I learned how to do this chart, how to use a similar chart, and so I could make the decision to use an article or not to use an article and which article to use. And then over time, it became faster and faster in my thinking. Over a long time, it becomes automatic. So as a native speaker of English, there's no choice making. It's so fast, it's basically instinctual now. But for those learning, this can be very helpful. So, step number 1, take a noun, any noun, and ask yourself the first question. Is it a proper noun? Well, I think you know what a proper noun is, right? The name of a person or a place or a specific thing. Names, right? Titles, like President Biden or Prime Minister Trudeau. The title Prime Minister gets a capital. My name is Paul. I get a capital letter. The next question you have to ask is it specific? And this is where it gets tricky. Look at the other questions, guys. Is it uncountable? Well, you can just check the dictionary and find a C or a U. Is it uncountable or countable? That's the easy question to ask. Is it plural? Well, that's an easy question to answer too, right? Does it begin with a vowel? Well, that's kind of easy to answer too because it's the first letter of the noun. And then you decide, finally, the tricky question to answer is it specific? How do you know if something is specific or not? Well, the only way to know is from the context. And the idea of specificity is, does the listener or the reader know which noun you're talking about, right? So for example, if I said, I want to use a pen. Well, is it specific? No, any pen is fine. I'm talking about something not specific or unspecific, right? If I told you, I need a book from my shelf, a book, you don't know which one. If I told you, please give me the book, you wouldn't know which one I'm talking about. So it's the context, it's the mutual understanding of the background information that decides whether it's specific or not. Now, what if I introduce a book to you in our conversation? Hey guys, let me show you a really good book I read. It's called Runaway Horses by Yukio Mishima. Mishima Yukio, Japanese literary figure. This is a really great book. Okay, so I introduced it to you. This is a book. But now you know the book. So now if I'm pointing to that book or referring to that book, now that you've understood the book I'm talking about, I can say the book. The book I showed you is by Mishima. You know which book I'm talking about because I previously introduced it. So our shared understanding in the context decides whether you understand if I'm talking about something specific or not. So when we go through this chart, the question is it specific or not? It's not in the dictionary. It's not a grammar rule. It's the context of your conversation. Okay? So, let me show you the book. Right? The book that I already introduced. Let me show you another book. I'll show you this book. It's called All the Names by Jose Saramago. And Saramago's book is interesting. Okay? Now I can say, well, let me show you the book again. The Saramago book, because now we have two. Okay, so this chart is a good way to decide which article you need. So let's try it. Book, let's say, The Mishima book, a Mishima book. So the noun we're going to use here is book. Is it a proper noun? Well, the title is a proper noun, Runaway Horses, but the word book is not a proper noun. It's not the name of a person or a company or a country. It's not a proper noun. Is it specific? Well, if yes, then we use the. Okay? Let me show you another book that's not specific. Let me just get an example. Okay, this book is Trees on a Slope. But let me imagine we didn't show you the cover, so you don't know the specific title. Is it a proper noun? No. Is it specific? No, it's just a book. Is it uncountable? No, you can have one or two books. So we go to the next question. Is it plural? No, there's only one in my hand. Does it begin with a vowel? The word B for book? No. So we say a book, right? So you can, it's like a checklist. It's a really good tool for learners to develop their understanding of how to choose articles. However, it's not the full story of articles. This is the basic grammatical rule of articles. But remember I talked about that triangle. Form. Well, this chart explains the form of using articles, the grammar rules and structures. And the meaning of an article is that it points to a noun. And that noun is either a specific noun that you've been introduced to and you know which one I'm talking about, that's a specific noun. Or the article points to a general noun like, I want a pizza. I don't care which pizza, any pizza. I'm hungry. I want a pizza. So it's pointing to a million pizzas that are possible, right? But when I say, let me show you the book, I'm just pointing to one possibility, right? One possibility. That's why it's the. But when we think about language, we have to think about grammar, form, meaning, and use. And use is what we're talking about here, how it's used. So let me go to a couple of other points here, guys. I'm going to show you a couple of pieces of research from prominent grammarians, people who research the way language is used, okay? Let's bring that up. And these grammarians do all this research about language. They're not interested in rules. They're interested in studying how it's used commonly, how language is used in a specific context, a society or a country, okay? And the first one is Bollinger. Bollinger is a grammarian. And Bollinger says the definite article, the, right? We're talking about the, good old the. The definite article, the, singles out or makes definite and specific, makes something, a noun, definite or specific, the thing mentioned against a background of a more inclusive whole. Let's think about that. The thing mentioned, the thing you already mentioned, against a background of a more inclusive whole. Now, they're not talking about a physical background. They're talking about a knowledge background. So, for example, you guys know what books are, right? You've probably read lots of books. You know that in the world there are millions of books. If you go to a bookstore, you can see thousands of books. That's the background of your knowledge. And the thing mentioned is one thing, the thing. So the definite article, when I say the book, the Mishima book that I'm talking about, I'm singling it out. I'm making it specific against a background in your mind, in your knowledge, of a more inclusive whole. The whole knowledge you have of all the books in the world. Okay? That's what the definite article does. Now here's another point from two scholars, Liu and Gleason. Liu and Gleason. Okay? They also mention that cultural use, remember we're talking about use here, cultural use is the use of a noun that is unique and is a unique and well-known referent in a speech community. A referent is a thing that you refer to. So up here, the thing mentioned against a background, that thing is the referent, okay? The thing you're pointing to. Cultural use is the use of a noun that is unique and well-known, referent, the book, in a speech community. Okay, now, what the hell is a speech community? Well, here's one. You guys and me. We are the Hard-Boiled English Live community, right? And together, we have background information that we've shared together, maybe from past shows, right? For example, you know that I'm wearing this jacket and tie, and it looks familiar to you from the last one, right? So if you say, the tie Paul wears, we know what it is. It's a dark blue tie, right? It's familiar. So in a speech community. What else is a speech community? Well, how about the country you live in? Or how about the school you go to? Or how about the club you belong to? Or how about your group of friends in your neighborhood? Remember when you're growing up, you and your friends have special terms and words and phrases and expressions that you share, but you don't use them in front of mom and dad, right? You share them in your small speech community. So we can think of a speech community on all kinds of levels, like huge levels like the world, smaller levels like your country or your city or your town or your neighborhood or even your family or your business. Each one of those is a specific speech community, right? Or another way to think of that is a microculture. Microculture, a small culture, not the culture of your country, like Japanese culture or Colombian culture or Canadian culture. A microculture can be as small as your family or your company. If you're in business, you know the expression culture because businesses are always talking about building their business culture, right? So when we talk about culture, we're not always talking about our country's one big culture. You know, I live in a multicultural country, Canada, so here we have people that moved here from all over the world, so they bring their culture, and we share those cultures. So we have lots of micro-cultures in Canada, but even smaller cultures in little groups, right? This is an important idea because over here we have this idea that cultural use is the use of a noun that is unique and well known in that speech community. Okay, let's think about that. Now, this question we have today was sent to us by Ryomi and Kenta. And Ryomi and Kenta are students of the on-the-spot language program in Toronto. We have a comment here from, we love this, thank you. Ralph Lauren, nice suit, very comfortable. So On the Spot is a language program in Toronto, Canada. Ryomi and Kenta are students there. So they're in a speech community, right? On the Spot language program is a nice small program, and they have their own little community, their own little culture inside there between the educator, Anish, and his students. But they're also in Toronto. And Toronto is a big city in Canada, and it's in the center of the country. It's actually where I grew up. But I now live in Vancouver, on the West Coast, another city. And so Toronto and Vancouver, when I travel back and forth, I notice there are some cultural differences, different expressions, different accents even. So cities are microcultures. They're a little bit different in their culture, even though they're Canadian culture. So Kenta and Ryomi are inside a microculture. They're inside Toronto culture, okay? And Toronto is a province, which is like a state or a prefecture, or in Japanese ken, like Osaka ken, or Yamagata Ken. It's not a city, it's a region that may have many cities inside it, but it's part of a country. So Toronto is inside Ontario. Ontario is the bigger region. There's other cities in Ontario. There's Toronto, there's Peterborough, there's Ottawa, right? They're all inside the province of Ontario. So there's a speech community there. There's a microculture. Okay, let me erase the board and get to our specific examples. But keep this idea of microculture or speech community in your mind, because it's part of the explanation here. All right, so Ryomi wants to know, why do we have an article here and no article here? Okay, there's a couple more graphics I want to share with you. Let's look at the way when we use, now I showed you the chart, how we decide on the specific definite article. But in the general use, or let's say conventional use, in a speech community or microculture, right? And you guys told me what the meaning of the word tacit is, right? You told me that earlier. You did your research and you told me that tacit means unspoken, right? Understood without saying. So tacit is an important idea here. Inside a speech community, there are conventional uses of things. Uses of grammar that everyone agrees to use inside that microculture, inside that speech community. Maybe in another city, there's different conventions. And those conventions may or may not be grammatically correct, following the rules. That's what we have to know. Okay, we have to keep that in mind. So when we talk about definite articles, there are some conventions we have to look at. There are some categories. So let's first look at proper nouns with no article, right? Proper nouns, names of places, names of people, names of cities, etc. So what proper nouns with a capital letter, right? Rogers has a capital letter. Let's go back a step. These are all proper nouns, right? Because they have a capital letter. They're the names of places. So which proper nouns get no article? Well, most geographical names, most places, right? Continents like Asia, countries like Germany, cities like Vancouver, Osaka, Paris, Seoul, Taipei, Toronto, and people like Paul, Taylor Swift, or even fictional people like Mickey Mouse, fictional characters get a capital, but they get no article. Okay? Also, corporations, companies like Apple, Nike, Sony, Petrobras in Brazil. Okay? No article. So when we talk about them in a sentence, we don't use an article. We just say, Paul listened to Taylor Swift and watched Mickey Mouse. No articles, right? So those are the categories, generally true, that we use no articles. Now this is the form. This is the usual correct grammatical form. Now we have to think about the exceptions, the broken rules that we see in conventional use inside a micro community. Okay? Let's look at geographic categories with no article. Okay, so again, this is more detail. Continents, Asia, America, Africa. Countries, Canada, Ireland, India. Counties, like a small area with several towns. Nassau County. Cities, again, like Vancouver and Osaka. Lakes, like Lake Michigan, Lake Ontario. Island names, like Catalina Island or Staten Island. Points of land that go into the ocean. Point Mugu, Point Roberts. Bays in the ocean, right? Tampa Bay, San Francisco Bay. Capes, Cape Cod, Cape Horn, Cape something there. Parks like Yosemite Park, Stanley Park, and streets and roads like Downing Street or Abbey Road. And also some cities have a square, a town square, like a Times Square or Tiananmen Square. Okay? These geographical categories have no article. Some do. Let's look at those. Okay, so if we follow our regular rule of proper nouns, geographical categories have no article. And here are some more detailed categories of geography with no article. However, there are some exceptions. These are not grammatical rules. These are conventional use. Okay? In this case, the speech community is global. This is how these things are referred to worldwide. So the speech community for these exceptions is worldwide. So regions, big regions of a country like the Crimea, or in Canada, the prairies. That's several provinces, right? A huge part of Canada is prairies, flat land. Deserts, the Sahara, right? There's only one Sahara in Africa. It's specific. So these still follow the rules in a way. The Mojave Desert. Peninsulas like the Iberian Peninsula, right? Oceans or seas like the Pacific Ocean, the Black Sea. You can start seeing a pattern here, right? Because even though they're proper nouns, they are specific, right? There are lots of oceans in the world, but the Pacific is one of those oceans. So in these examples, you can see that the definite article does point to it. And again, the Pacific Ocean is what we all sort of call it when using English around the world. So the speech community is global. Rivers like the Amazon River, the Charles River, gulfs, the Persian Gulf, canals like the Erie Canal, the Suez Canal. Public institutions, right? Public institutions. They can be operated by the government or they can be operated by private businesses, but they are available to the public. For example, the Royal Museum, the New York Stock Exchange. Public institutions. Let's come back to that. So these are geographic categories that we do use the article the. Geographic categories with the article, but these are collective plural nouns. For example, countries that have political terms in their name, right? The United States. State is a political term. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Kingdom is a political concept. The People's Republic of China. Republic is a political term. The Federal Republic of Germany. Federal or federation is a political term. So when they have a political term in their name, the. How about groups of lakes, right? So plural grouping of lakes, the Great Lakes, the Finger Lakes, or mountain ranges. A specific mountain may have a name like Mount Baker, but a group of mountains called a range, like the Rocky Mountains, gets the. And then groups of islands like the Marianas, the Canary Islands, the Bahamas, or even the Philippines. What's plural about the country name Philippines? Well, it's a group of islands, the Philippine Islands. So these are collective category nouns, geographic nouns, with an article. There's one more category I want to talk about. Localized cultural use of the article. So again, we're talking about public or local institutions that everyone in that culture, that microculture or speech community, they know the name, they know which one you're talking about. So, the New York Stock Exchange. There are several stock exchanges around the world that trade currencies and stocks, but there's only one inside New York, right? So it's localized to New York. The Royal Museum of Ontario, the Apollo Theatre, the Tower of London, the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. Okay, you start to see what's happening here. Local institutions that everyone knows which one you're talking about, right? Look at this one here, the Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts. That's in Washington, D.C. There's probably several centers for the performing arts, but there's only one Lincoln Center. Okay? Also, neighborhood branches of chains. If you live in a neighborhood and you have a Tim Hortons or a CIBC Bank or the Burger King or an Apple Store, the Apple Store, and you tell your wife, if I tell my wife, for example, I'm going to the bank, well, there's hundreds of banks in my city, but there's only one bank that we usually use in our neighborhood. So she knows which one I'm talking about. So this is localized cultural use. And in the case of a neighborhood, very local neighborhood use, right? And finally, corporate, neighborhood, or home places. So again, we're talking about micro-community. The neighborhood is a community, a speech community, but also so is your company, right? Or your neighborhood, or your home. Every family has its own little culture, micro-culture, their own ways of doing things. So the conference room. If you work in a business office, you have a conference room. So if someone tells you, I'm going to meet you at the conference room, you know what they're talking about, right? If they say, I'm going for a walk in the park, well, you're probably talking about the close by park, the nearest park. Every morning, before I start working with my students, I go to the gym. If I told my wife, I'm going to the gym, she knows which one I'm talking about. Our apartment building has a gym in it. That's where I go every day. It's specific, right? It's specific inside our culture. Or in your home, there's one kitchen, right? So if you say, where is my dinner? It's in the kitchen, right? Or the closet. Where did I put my shoes? It's in the closet. They're in the closet. Okay. I just gave you a lot of information, and I understand it can be confusing. But I want you to understand that the original definition of the definite article fits here, right? It makes something specific against a background of more inclusive, right? There are lots of banks in the world, but in my neighborhood, there's only one that I use. So it becomes local cultural use, okay? And again here, cultural use is the use of a noun that is unique and well known in a speech community, right? And a speech community can be super small. For example, in my home, there's only my wife and I, but we are a speech community. We understand each other's specific little terms, right? So if I say the gym, she knows exactly what I'm talking about, right? If I told my friend who lives in another city, hey, are you going to the gym? I might not know which gym they're talking about, right? So let's go back to our examples and see how they match what we're talking about here. The Rogers Center. That's a big stadium where sports are played and concerts are held in Toronto. So the speech community is Toronto, and maybe Canada, if other people know it. So if you say I'm going to the Rogers Center, people understand where you're going. There's only one Rogers Center. So which category does it belong to? It's not really a geography. It's not part of land, but it's a place. What kind of place? A public institution. Okay? So Diomi, if you're still with me, the Rogers Center is a public institution. Everyone in that city knows where Rogers Center is. It's a specific public institution, right? Where's the other? Public institution, the New York Stock Exchange, the Royal... Look at this one here, the Lincoln Center. Well, the Rogers Center. There are several centers for arts in Toronto, right? But the Rogers Center, everyone knows which one it is. So it gets the article. And the Eaton Center. Well, the Eaton Center is a mall. It's a local institution, right? It's recognizable throughout the city. It's what we can call a public institution, a local institution. Now, Eaton is a big company. Eaton is a big company, and they built many malls across the country. So depending on which city you're going to, they may have their own Eaton Center. Vancouver had an Eaton Center. I'm not sure if it still exists. So in Vancouver, if you say, I'm going to the Eaton Centre, your listener will think you're going to the Vancouver Eaton Centre, not Toronto. So it's local. So that's those two. However, we have this other problem here. Yorkdale Mall. Isn't a mall a public institution? A performing arts center, a kind of theater or stadium, those are public institutions. But what about a mall? If I say I'm going to the Yorkdale Mall, I think you understand where I'm going, right? So what's going on here? Can we say the Yorkdale Mall? Well, I think you can. But there's a different problem. The Yorkdale Mall isn't really its name. I did a little research, and the company name is actually the Yorkdale Shopping Center. Sorry, no the. Yorkdale Shopping Center. A shopping center in the Yorkdale neighborhood. That's the company name. In fact, on their website, they just call it Yorkdale. So, when we call it a mall, I think we can say, now this is what you should call it, I suppose. That's the company name, Yorkdale Shopping Center. But if you want to make that shorter, because shopping center is a synonym for mall, I don't see why we can't say the Yorkdale Mall. It's the same as the Eaton Centre, really, when we talk about our local culture and whether it's understood by everyone, right? Remember our graphic said, use of a noun that is unique and well known in a speech community. Well, in Toronto, if you said the Yorkdale Mall, will people understand which one you're talking about? I think so. So, here's my opinion on it. I think that's fine. It fits the grammatical category, right? Neighborhood places, public institutions, and neighborhood branches of chains. Actually, the Eaton Centre is a branch of Eaton's shopping malls. I don't know about Yorkdale. I think it's a local, it fits this category, local institution, right? So I think that's fine, actually, the Yorkdale Mall. According to the website, Yorkdale is also fine, right? Yorkdale is also fine to say, hey, I'm going to Yorkdale. Everyone knows you're going to the mall, right? Because the actual name is Yorkdale Shopping Center. And that's fine to say too. So whether you're allowed to say something or not is not the issue. We're talking about conventional use in a speech community or microculture. In Toronto, if you said Yorkdale Shopping Center, everyone understands you. So some people say that, I'm sure. If you said Yorkdale Mall, everyone understands you in that speech community, so that's fine too. If you said the Yorkdale Mall, well, it's a public institution because it's a mall, everyone goes there, that's fine too. So if you're asking me, are you allowed to say it? I think you should go ahead and say it. The Yorkdale Mall, Yorkdale Shopping Center, I think they're all fine, okay? They all fit this criteria. They all fall into the category of public institution, okay? Now, what about Niagara Falls? You know, the Niagara Falls are a nice waterfall in Ontario. Beautiful place. I should have brought a picture of it. Okay, what's going on here? Well, when you talk about Niagara Falls, let me just take a break one moment and say hello to Ali. Ali Haider is joining us. Great to have you with us. Thank you, Ali. So, Niagara Falls, what is it? Are we talking about this waterfall? right? And actually, it's kind of a big one, so there's more than one. It kind of goes in a curve. So there's more than one. They are plural. I think there's actually 3. American Falls, there's 2, but it's plural. So when we talk about that, why don't we say the Niagara Falls? According to our graphic, it falls into the category of collective geographic places, right? Like the Niagara Falls, not mountain ranges, not lake groups, maybe rivers. Didn't we have one that said rivers? Here, yeah, we had... Oh, I thought I had rivers somewhere. Yeah, we did, I think. Yeah, here. The Amazon River, the Charles River. So if you're talking about the Niagara River, that's fine. Okay, the Niagara River. Oh gosh, that's faint. The Niagara River is fine. Okay. Here's the other problem though. Niagara Falls is the name of the city. And what did we say about cities? Cities like Vancouver, Osaka, Paris, no article. Cities like cities that have political names in them. Well, it says countries, but it stands for cities too. The city or the District of Columbia in Washington. The district, or I don't know, I can't think of another example, but cities with a political name in it also get the article. But Niagara is actually, I believe, a native or indigenous word, and falls are these waterfalls. So that city name gets no article. So as a city, when you're talking about the city, Niagara Falls. But when most people talk about what's in Niagara Falls, the city, they're usually talking about the waterfalls, right? I want to see the Niagara waterfalls. In that case, we often call them the falls. I want to see the falls. Which ones? The Falls of Niagara. So if you go to Niagara Falls, the city, right, that's a speech community, and say, I want to see the falls, or where are the falls, people will tell you where those are. Inside Niagara Falls, the city. If you're even inside Canada, if you said, oh, I want to visit the falls, people will probably know you mean the ones that are in Niagara. Now, again, Niagara Falls is the name of the city. Niagara Falls is the name of the city. The falls is the name of this geographic thing, this phenomenon. However, over time, people are talking about the same thing, because nobody goes to Niagara Falls because of, let's say, the sports team. Like in Toronto, you can watch the Toronto Blue Jays or Maple Leafs or Argonauts football team. Nobody goes to Niagara Falls for that. Everyone goes to Niagara Falls for either to see the falls, or there's a wine area, so some people go there for the wine district. So I think what's happened is the falls and Niagara Falls, the city, have become one thing, right? So if you say, I want to go visit Niagara Falls, the city, you really mean the falls, okay? But you have to see them in that city. And because that's a city name, no article, okay? So Niagara Falls is the name of a city, no article, okay? If you're talking about these things, that's the falls, right? I grew up in Ontario, in Toronto, and my parents would often say, hey, do you want to go visit the falls? It's like a 1.5 hour drive from where I grew up, but I knew what she meant. In our Ontario speech community, there's really only one falls, so I knew which one she was talking about. The falls in Niagara. Is it wrong to call these the Niagara Falls? No, it's not really wrong, right? These are the Niagara Falls. So if we're talking about the city is fine, and the waterfalls, I think that's fine too. You can call these the Niagara Falls, the falls that are in Niagara. But if you're talking about the city, you should call it Niagara Falls. And sometimes people use that word like it means all of the things in Niagara Falls, the city. Okay? Niagara Falls is the name of the city and the phenomenon, the waterfalls. So I know that's a lot of information. And articles are one of those confusing things in English because we do have certain rules, grammatical form, and that's where this can help you, right? But we also not break, but sort of change the rules according to these type of considerations, right? There's a lot of variation here with proper nouns. What we're talking about here is proper nouns. So when we're talking about articles, this applies to all articles. But the question of whether a proper noun, here, what we've been talking about today is proper noun and whether a proper noun is specific or not. Because if it's specific, it's going to get the, right? It's going to get the. So it's this little section here that's tricky. Is it a proper noun? Yes. Okay, no article. Usually. Usually. Actually, I should put a little connecting dot here from no article to the. This is not entirely true. Proper nouns sometimes get an article. So, let me summarize this for a second. And this is why I think students get confused. In some cases, proper nouns do get an article the. Right? Right? So here it says proper noun. Is it a proper noun? Yes. Then no article. There are exceptions. In conventional use, some cases proper nouns do get an article the. Would you call me the Paul? No, of course not. Would you call my country the Canada? No. But we've seen some exceptions. Right? We've looked at categories with no article that follow the rule. But then there are these categories with an article. And these are the ones you need to study and remember. And these are the collective categories with an article. And these are the localized cultural use of article with a proper noun. All of this discussion is about proper nouns, right? I'm going to take a little breath now and let you ask me questions about this. Let's see if anyone has questions. I was about to ask how the Yorkdale Mall sounds to you. Thank you for it. Yeah, it's actually okay, right? It fits the grammatical exception policy here. It fits, right? It's a local institution. So if you say the Yorkdale Mall, people understand which mall, which Yorkdale Mall you're talking about. However, in that speech community, people may have gotten used to calling it Yorkdale Mall. And that's okay. That's a localized use, right? And it's the people of that neighborhood or that people of that city that determine which one they want to call it. And as I said, according to the website, their logo just says Yorkdale. So I think they're all fine. Yorkdale, Yorkdale Mall, the Yorkdale Mall, or Yorkdale Shopping Center. I think they're all fine. I think that, and you know, the real test is in the use. If you use it, do people understand which one you're talking about? Well, I'm sure they do. In Toronto. Now, if I go to Japan and say, oh, I work at the Yorkdale Mall, no one's going to be confused because that's not even a Japanese word. It's an English word. So, and they probably have never heard of that mall. So they're outside of that local speech community, right? Yeah, Mississippi Falls. Now, I'm not sure, Ali, but maybe that's a city. Maybe that's a city name. The Niagara Falls and Niagara Falls. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for answering this for me as a teacher. Yeah, Anish at On the Spot is a fantastic teacher and a native speaker of English, by the way. But as you saw tonight, the full explanation is not simple. There's a lot of material that we went through. Look how many graphics I showed you. I showed you that one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So to really understand this reasoning, the answer is not simple, right? And, you know, not everyone spends their time thinking about this stuff. I do. And that's why I'm here to help you guys, because I don't expect you guys to think so deeply about this stuff. I want you out there using English and making friends and communicating and using your English in work. You know, it's my job and my passion to investigate this stuff and hopefully explain it to you. There you go, right? Yeah, that's why the lady over there said this to me. You want to go to Niagara Falls, the city, because to watch the waterfall, you have to go to the city first. Go to Niagara Falls for the falls, right? The falls. And most people go to Niagara Falls. It's a very small city, right? It's a very small, maybe even it's a town, I'm not sure. And there's not a lot of attractions. Most people go there for the waterfalls, right? That's the main attraction. Now there's a neighborhood with some museums and amusements. That's an attraction. I always like that stuff. I like the haunted house. And nearby is a beautiful wine district with lots of wineries and restaurants and hotels. It's a beautiful neighborhood. Actually, I was married there to my wife. I love Niagara Falls, the city. But if someone asks you, are you going to Niagara Falls, the city, for the falls, that means for the purpose of the falls. Because you could be going there just for the wine, right? At Christmas time last year, my brother and his wife were in Toronto. My whole family was. And my brother and his wife visited Niagara Falls. Now, they're really passionate about wine, so they didn't really care about the falls. They've seen them before. They went to Niagara Falls for the wine. Right? Yeah, see, this is interesting. I think this is one of the problems out there in the education world, is this idea of specific. We use the for a specific noun, but then we have to ask, what makes the noun specific? Right? What makes the noun specific when we make this determination? Right? Is it a proper noun? Yes. No article. Right? So in their nature, like my name is Paul Duke. That's a specific name. You don't need an article because there's only one Paul Duke, in theory, in this speech community, right? But, you know, there are other people out there named Paul Duke, I'm sure. So the idea of, or a company, let's say a company like Sony. There's only one company called Sony, legally. So we don't need an article because it's clear which Sony you're talking about. There's only one, right? So I understand why teachers teach that, Maki. I understand why they say that. All proper nouns are inherently, by definition, specific. The problem is, it's not always true in use, right? Once we're out there in the real world and you say, oh, I talked to Bob. Which Bob? I know four Bobs, right? Oh, I talked to Steve. Well, even in my small speech community of my family and friends, I know two Steves. Which one? So they're not specific. So once you start using proper nouns out in the world, They're not all specific. That's the problem, right? So I don't think you should hate your Japanese teacher, but it's just not the complete story out there in the world of use, right? The context is what makes it specific, right? Let's go back to that. The thing mentioned against a background of a more inclusive whole. So the inclusive whole is the background of knowledge that you, the speaker, and the listener has, that you share, right? But if it's a total stranger from another country, you don't share the background. So if I said to another person from another country, oh, do you want to see the falls? They might not understand what I'm pointing to because they don't share the same background as I do, right? And so that's where this is the other part of the idea. A noun is unique and well-known referent in a speech community. So if I talk to someone else who's in Canada and I say, oh, I want to visit the falls, they know what I'm talking about because we're sharing the background information. We grew up in the same country. So this idea of specific is not it's not a simple idea. What makes something specific? One, if you already know what I'm talking about, like when I introduce this book, I want to show you a book. Now I introduce it in specific detail. Runaway Horses by Yukio Mishima. Now you know a specific book. Now when I say, hey, I want to show you the book again, you know which one I'm talking about. I've already made it specific. So it's already specific against a background of a more inclusive whole, the possibility of 1 million books, right? But these two ideas have to work together, right? The background here that they're talking about is the speech community or the microculture, right? That's what makes it specific. If you and I are talking, just two of us, Maki, Milo's diary is Ryomi, sorry. Ryomi, you're Milo's diaries, right. If you and I are talking privately, just two of us, we are a speech community. We are a speech community of two people. So, if it's specific, it means you already know what I'm talking about. You have to already know what I'm talking about, right? So, the definition of specific depends on the context. The speech community context or the microculture context. And the context can be as small as two people. Two people is a speech community. Speech community, right? If you are married or have a long relationship, you know what I'm talking about when I say that you and your partner have a kind of speech community. You become a microculture. You have all kinds of expressions and terms that don't make sense to anyone else, right? Or nicknames for each other that nobody knows because you live in this kind of private relationship world, this private speech community. So when you're talking with one other person, you make something specific by introducing it. Hey, Ryomi, I want to show you a book. It's called, I want to show you a book. It's called Words of Farewell. The book is excellent. The book is interesting, right? Once I introduce a book and then give you details about it, specific details like the name, it transforms into a specific noun, right? And you and I know which one I'm talking about. You and I now share the background information. We share the specific noun. It becomes specific, right? Most textbooks, most teachers don't really explain that in much detail, right? Yeah, again, Square One is a proper noun, but it's the company name of the mall, right? It's like Niagara Falls, the city. Square One is like Yorkdale. It's the name of the company, the name of the corporation that owns Square One. Now, if you bring a stranger to Mississauga, where that mall is, and growing up, that was one of my favorite malls. If you bring a stranger there, you might say, I want to show you the Square One shopping center. That's totally fine because you're trying to make it specific for them, right? But Square One is the name of the place. And by the way, it's also a square. It's designed in a square. So it also kind of fits the category of, where were we? We had a category of squares. Times Square, Tiananmen Square. When we have a square design in a city, we call it Times Square or Tiananmen Square or Robson Square in my city. So the example of Square One kind of fits. No article, right? It's just the one is on the other side. Someone is saying, you are the language detective. Yes, well, thank you. Maybe I'm not the only one, but in our little speech community of followers of my show and people that I'm connected with on social media, my network, I think I'm the only language detective. In my network are lots of great educators like Anish from On the Spot, but we all do different things in education. With my video work, I am the grammar detective, right? It's my Halloween costume every day, right? Not hat time yet, but thank you. Hopefully you mean that in a positive way. My parents went to Niagara Falls, the city, for the wine and to eat lobsters, yes. Here's a little secret, all you people in international. In Canada, lobster is a very beautiful, delicious food. It's really kind of cheap in Canada. Well, I wouldn't say cheap, but it's affordable. In some countries, it's really expensive. In Canada, it's not so expensive, especially as you move east. It's more expensive on the West Coast, less expensive in Toronto, and actually pretty cheap on the East Coast because that's where they fish it out of the water. So if you love lobster, come to Canada, go to the East Coast. It's pretty cheap. I'd love to know the name of that book, Maki. There are so many things around them. Yes, good. Maybe you can send me a message privately and let me know the title of that book. I'm always looking for new books to study. Ali says, I guess the article to underline is specifically. Yeah. The article is to point to something that you know is specific, the listener or the reader or the person you're talking to. It has to be specific for them, right? If I told you right now, let me show you the phone. Which phone? Or what if I said, oh, I want to show you the book or the monster? Okay, let's try that. Guys, I want to show you the monster. Paul, which monster? Well, this monster? Maybe. Ouch. This monster? Maybe. I don't know, there's several monsters in my room. So which one am I referring to? You don't know. But if I say I want to show you a monster, and then I show you one monster, and I tell you the name of this monster, King Ghidorah, from Japanese monster movies, now you know the monster. Now he becomes specific, right? Teacher, I grew up the Niagara Falls. No, not quite. You grew up in Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls is the city. Grew up in Niagara Falls. That's the name of the city. Or I grew up in Toronto. Where did you grow up, Ali? Ali, I grew up in name of the city. So the Everest is the highest mountain of the Himalayas, or just Everest. It's called Mount Everest. So remember the categories of geography we have. Where are we? Oh, I guess it's not on the list. But a single mountain is just called Mount Everest, Mount Baker, Mount Washington, Mount Seymour. That's one mountain. Okay? Everest is one mountain. But Everest is one mountain in a chain of mountains. So if you're talking about the range of mountains, the whole group of mountains, then we use the Himalayas, right? The Himalayas. It's a series of mountains. Everest is one of them, Mount Everest. So I guess I should have that on the list, but I don't. Sorry, guys. A single mountain is just Mount something. So in this case, Mount Everest is the highest mountain of the Himalayas. So the Himalayas is correct, but Mount Everest, or just Everest, because everyone knows Mount Everest is a mountain. Again, when we have conventional use and everyone understands it, we can also drop words. Let's get rid of this. It is great you are here. Well, thank you. I wish I knew your name, but thank you. Great questions, guys. Great comments. Really happy to hear everyone's got so many ideas and comments. Great. Guys, I think we are just about out of time. So I'm going to have to close the show. Let me tell you a couple things. Unfortunately, next week I will not be live streaming. I'll be streaming the following week. Okay, so put November 18 on your calendar. November 18th on your calendar, okay? Next week, I have an important engagement to attend, so I will not be live streaming. But also, I better clear the board for this. At this time of year, every year in Canada where I am, we change our clocks. It's called daylight savings time. It's a hotly debated topic that may change in the future. But twice a year, we change our clocks. And there are some benefits to it because, you know, in the north of the globe, where I live, the seasons change and the lighting changes, the sunset changes. So what we try to do is save as much sunlight as possible. So right now, this show is 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Next week, it's going to be at 6 p.m. Pacific Savings Time. Okay? What that means is we pull our clock backwards by 1 hour. So whatever time it is in your country today, let's say if it's 10 a.m. What time did this show start, Maki? Maki, can you tell me? You're in Japan. Oh. Saying hello to Chieko Kitauka. Hi, Chieko. Long time no see. Maki, you're in Japan, so when the show started at 6 p.m. my time today, what time was that for you? 10 a.m.? So I'm going to pull the clock back next week, and my 6 is going to equal 5. So what does that mean for you guys? I guess it means 9 a.m. Right? So next week, if you're in Japan or that time zone, it's going to be 9 a.m. for you guys, not 10 a.m. Does that make sense? Yes, so Ryomi said it's 10 a.m. in Japan, right? So 6 p.m. when this show started today was 10 a.m. But next week, it's going to be called 6 p.m. PST, but it really becomes 9 a.m. your time. So, my Japanese viewers, 9 a.m. next week. Okay, 9 a.m. If you're in Brazil, right now we have 4 hours difference. Next week we're going to have 3 hours difference. So, I know that's complicated. We'll get used to it. We'll figure it out together. $7 p.m. Oh, that's interesting. In Colombia. Yeah, okay. I think what I'll do then, guys, is I'll start at 5 p.m. my time so that it's the same for you. Yeah. If you like this time, that is. So if I change to 5, it will still be 10 for you, right? We can do that. Or do you want the show earlier? We'll have to experiment. Anyways, next week, no show. November 18th, we'll have another show. We'll come back to it, okay? Okay, next show, Friday, November 18th, not next week. And November 18th, I'll be answering a question sent to me by Miss Eni. So that's a good question. One more thing I want to mention to you. My fellow educator named Andrea, a good friend and colleague, has begun hosting a series of workshops called the Studio Joe. And this is Andrea. Oops, this is Andrea. She's a fabulous educator, and she's hosting workshops called Studio Joe. It's an English language workshop. And in that workshop, you'll be learning techniques that movie stars and actors use to develop their voice, to develop the way they perform the language, the way they speak the words in a movie or a stage performance. She's using some of those techniques to help English learners become more confident speakers. She'll teach people how to breathe better, how to stand, how to perform the language with emphasis and emotion and tones and stress. And it's all active. There's no desks, no tests or anything like that. It's a live workshop. Fantastic new project. And of course you have to be in Vancouver to participate. But if you're watching this live show or this recording and you're in Vancouver, catch this QR code and attend her next workshop. I highly recommend it. Okay? Well, guys, thank you very much for watching tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you again to Ryomi and Kenta for sending me the question. And again, guys, if you have a question, please email me a 30-second or less video with your question to hardboiledenglish6@gmail.com. Okay? Send me your question, and I'll build the show around it, and we'll investigate it together, okay? So I'd like to say goodbye. It's now 4 a.m. in Belgium, so yeah, that's late, Chris. Sorry. I think I'll change my time to 5. So Anish, if I'm doing my show at 5, it'll be 8 for you instead of 9. Okay, it's all very confusing to me. I'll have to work on that through the week. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the show tonight. Thanks for being with me here on Hard Boiled English Live. It's a pleasure and an honor to help you investigate the mysteries of English grammar every week. So I'm very thrilled about that. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. Remember, if the show starts at 6 p.m. PST, it's going to be 11 a.m. Is that good, Ryomi? Or would you like it earlier? What's better for you? Because I could host it at 5, and which keeps it at 10 a.m. Let me know, guys. Okay, it's time for me to get going, guys. So I'm going to say thank you and good night. I hope you've learned something today about articles and definite articles, the. Please send me your video questions, and I'll build a show around them. Until I see you again, guys, which is in 2 weeks, have a good week. Take care, keep learning, and as always, stay cool. Thanks for watching tonight's show. If you have an English grammar question, an English mystery, contact me on social media and send me a video of you asking the question. I'll investigate it on a future show. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button to get all the updates about videos and events. If you're feeling generous, you can also donate to the production costs of the show at Patreon or buy me a coffee. Finally, until the next time I see you on Hardboiled English Live, I want you to keep learning English. Stay healthy and stay cool.